Today, continuing our theme of prayer and what we can learn from Old Testament characters about prayer. Today, we're going to see what we can learn from Miriam, the sister of Moses. Now, we don't actually know all that much about Miriam, except that we know that Mary is a form of Miriam. So Mary, the mother of Jesus, was named after Miriam. We know from Exodus 2 that Moses had an older sister. And so we sort of assume that older sister is Miriam. And that was the girl who took Moses in his basket and hid him in the bulrushes so that the Egyptians wouldn't kill him. And just as a way of hoping that God was going to save his life. And you know the story, how the Egyptian princess comes down and hears the crying and says, "What's that?" and decides to adopt this wee baby boy, and how the sister then comes out and says, "Would you like me to find someone to nurse him for you?" and goes and finds his mother. And so it all works out. So we think that was Miriam. We also can assume that when Moses turned up out of the desert, the Sinai desert, to lead the people to freedom, that Miriam was there to welcome him, along with his brother Aaron. And we also know that she was there when they crossed the Sea of Reeds. So she's one of the people there in that famous story when the waters parted and they walked through on dry land to the other side. But we also know that there's another side to Miriam. She's not perfect. Well, who is? We know that she would have been there when Aaron made the golden calf that we were thinking about last week. So she'd have been there, she'd have been dancing, she'd have been worshiping along with all the others. We also know later on in Numbers chapter 12, we're told that Moses' brother Aaron and his sister Miriam conspired against him. They started undermining his authority. They're a bit jealous of his authority. And she even goes to the extent of using a phrase that probably today we'd say was racist. She says, "Oh, he's married a Cushite wife, Moses." That's when it all started to go wrong. Now, I'm not sure if it was a Cushite wife he married, but certainly I'm sure that the phrase wasn't well used, if you know what I mean. So she had the other side to her. And we also know that she eventually, her death is recorded in Numbers chapter 20. She dies at a place called Kadesh, and not long before her older brother Aaron also dies. And that's before they reach the promised land. So that's a quick resume of all we know about Miriam. And now Emma's going to read for us a short passage from Exodus chapter 15. So let's see what we can learn from Miriam about prayer.
When Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought the waters of the sea back over them, but the Israelites walked through the sea on dry land. Then Miriam, the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women followed her with tambourines and dancing. Miriam sang to them, "Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has hurled into the sea."
Thanks, Emma. You notice one of the first things we learn about Miriam is she's a prophet or prophetess. A prophet is someone through whom God speaks. So for all her faults, Miriam is still open to God's voice. And despite her age, now I was talking about this last week, Moses was 80 when God met him in the burning bush, and Miriam was older. So despite her age, Miriam is still open to hearing God's voice and still open to inspiring others, which is what we read about today. So let's just try and imagine the occasion, because it takes a bit of getting your head around. We live quite soft, cushioned lives here in the West compared to what was actually going on at that time. So let's just try and imagine it. The Israelites have just been miraculously rescued from 400 years of slavery. So just think back, what was 400 years ago? That was a long, long time ago. That was just after Henry VIII, etc. It was just right, that is going back some. 400 years of slavery and oppression at the hands of the biggest superpower the whole world had known. Okay? So here's the Israelites, they're slaves, they're worthless, their lives are worthless. And they're not just slaves being badly treated for 400 years, but towards the end it sort of begins to really escalate. And unimaginable things start to happen. Like baby boys being snatched and thrown to drown in the River Nile in front of their mother's eyes. Because they're worthless, they're just Hebrew slaves. You can do with them what you like. So that's what they have just been rescued from. God sends Moses. Moses confronts the king of Egypt. The king of Egypt doesn't care. Moses calls God to do more. God sends 10 plagues. The plagues get progressively worse and worse and worse. Eventually, the worst plague of all, and the king of Egypt has had enough. He said, go with these Hebrew slaves. We don't want them anymore. Go off into the desert with you. But their problems hadn't been solved in an instant just because the king of Egypt had let them go. They still had this great big long journey to go, and they still had the Sea of Reeds to cross, and they're constantly worried that the king of Egypt was going to change his mind. I mean, we think with Brexit, bring back the lorry drivers. That was nothing compared to this. The whole Egyptian economy was based on slavery, and suddenly the economy is starting to fall apart. So they're worried, are we going to get away, or is he going to change his mind? Because we're just slaves after all. And sure enough, just as they're approaching the Sea of Reeds, the news comes that Pharaoh is coming after them with a massive big army, with all the technology of the age, chariots and horsemen and everything, the works. He's coming to get them. And then once again, God shows his power. And Moses stretches out his staff, and a wind starts to blow, and a pathway opens up through the sea. And miraculously, the people realize they can escape. So through they go, water on either side. Through they go to the other side. And then along comes the king of Egypt. And he's, what's this? That pathway didn't used to be here. What's going on here? Water on this side, water on that side. Now, at that point, I think if he had been a wise king, he would have stopped and thought, that hasn't just happened. There's some sort of divine hand involved in this. And he'd have thought, yes, maybe it's the God who sent those 10 plagues on the land. If he had been a wise king, maybe he'd have stopped then and thought, maybe I should just sort of concede here and then turn round and head off back to the safety of my palaces in Egypt. Sadly, he wasn't a very wise king. And I think what he did was he sort of thought, there's a path. I'm the king of Egypt. Our gods are the greatest gods on earth. We are the greatest nation on earth. Little bit of path. Let's show them, let's get after them. So through they go. And of course, you all know what happened. I think in a sense, he's declaring, in that silly action, he's declaring we're greater than the God of the Hebrews. And of course, he's not. Leads his entire army into the sea. His entire army is utterly destroyed. And up on the hill opposite are this sort of motley crowd of Hebrew ex-slaves, and they're watching what has just happened. They saw the army approach. They saw the army coming through the valley. They're going, oh no! And then suddenly, and the army's gone. And they are stunned. And they're thinking, did that just happen? Are we really free? Who is this God who's just done this? And they don't know how to respond. And then up jumps Miriam, the 80-plus-year-old prophetess, and she grabs a tambourine and she starts dancing and singing the praises of the God. And she's singing these words over and over again. Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he is hurled into the sea. Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he is hurled into the sea. There's a famous film clip that if you're a real YouTube fanatic, you'll find it on YouTube if you look long enough. But it's called The Lone Dancer. And I'm sure there are quite a few clips about lone dancers on YouTube, but this particular one is about a lone dancer, a music festival. All the people at the music festival are on this hillside, and they're looking down at the valley where the band's playing, and they're listening to this music. And everybody else is just sitting listening, but this one man is so inspired by the music that he jumps to his feet and he starts to dance. And you can see from the film that he's not the world's best dancer. You know, he probably wouldn't have even made the preliminary rounds of Strictly Come Dancing, okay? So he's just not, he's going all over the place. But he's I'm not going to demonstrate, okay? But he's very enthusiastic. And he just dances away there on his own. And round about him, you can see people sort of going, oh, who's this? I wish he'd go away. I was just enjoying the music. And they start smiling and talking about him and just ignoring him in general. But he doesn't care. He just keeps on dancing. And then you see someone walking their way through the crowd up to where he is, and then they start dancing as well. So there's two of them dancing now. And then before you know it, it's like a dam bursting. Suddenly there's people coming from all directions. They're all joining him. The crowd of dancers is getting bigger and bigger. And all the smirking people who are sitting around are having to move out of the way because it's getting quite big. And people will tell you, it's not that man dancing that made the difference. It's the person who joined them. One person on their own going wild, people can cope with. Once someone starts joining them, then other people think, oh, I'm glad they joined them, I'll go and join them too, and off they go. And I think that's probably in my mind, that's what happened that day. Miriam, this 80-plus-year-old prophetess, is so overjoyed, she just grabs the tambourine, she just goes for it. And then someone else said, oh, she can do it, I'm going to do it too. So they grab their tambourine, they just join. Soon everybody's joining, everybody's singing, I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The army of Pharaoh's gone. They sing their joy and their praises to the God who has just shown them that they have nothing to fear because he's on their side. And whatever that lies ahead, and there's still lots of things for them to deal with, God is with them. The God who's just done that. He's their God. He's on their side. That's what prophecy is. It's a sort of gift from God. Jesus himself was a prophet, for example. It's really important part of the life of any church because it's the way God speaks to us. And anyone can be a prophet. You don't have to be a certain age. You certainly don't have to be over 80. But anyone can be a prophet. You don't need to go on training on how to be a prophet. You don't need a university degree to be a prophet. You just need to be open to God speaking to you. And he'll speak to you using words and symbols and feelings. You just have to be open. You've got to be open, and then you've got to be willing to share. I think this is what God is saying. And what you share has then got to be tested, and it's got to be sifted. And if it's what God wants, then that is how you lead people. And that's how he leads his church. And there will be people here today who will know that gift of prophecy, that stirring in your heart saying, we really need to do something. We really need to do something for our children. We really need to do something for the refugees. We really need to do, and you can't, it's just a feeling. You can't put it into words, but there's strong sense. And you're the people we need to listen to if God is going to lead us forward as a church. But there will be others sit here listening today or listening online who say, whoa, I never get feelings like that. But there's nothing to stop you being the first person who joins. See, when you think back to that man on the hill dancing, you could be dancing all night, no one paid a blind bit notice. It's when someone joined him, people started to pay attention. So you may not feel you have a gift of prophecy, but you can still support the person who does. And that's how God works. But anyway, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what has this got to do with prayer? Today was meant to be about prayer. Today was meant to be about what can we learn from Miriam about prayer? Well, here's what I think we can learn. I think we can learn that prayer is not just confession and intercession. Prayer is also thanksgiving and adoration. And I think we can learn that prayer is not just quiet and orderly use of words, Prayer can be expressed in exuberance and singing and dancing. One of the real blessings of singing and dancing is that these are ways in which we can really express our feelings to God. Really express our feelings to God. You know, the thing that people missed most about church when we first were able to come back with our masks on is we couldn't sing. There's a whole bunch of emotion invested in being able to praise God. And I haven't even started to talk about dancing. We were having our team meeting last Tuesday, and it was Norma, the cafe manager's turn to lead the team meeting. And she began by saying, well, before we pray for each other's needs, I think we should sing together. Oh, radical. So we did. We sang. We sang the first verse and chorus of How Great Thou Art. It was the only one we knew. And we, you know, I'm not saying we're the world's best singers, but we gave it our best shot, and it was genuine, it was sincere. And as we did that, well, certainly I think we all felt helped. We were helped to express our feelings to God. And we certainly felt his joy. And today's harvest. Today is the day where we come to thank God for his promises fulfilled, particularly over these last 18 months. I mean, think of what we've just been through over these last 18 months. And all the time, God has been with us, watching over us, providing for our needs. And there may well be a lot more of these in the year to come, but God is still going to be with us. So at Harvest Thanksgiving, we express our gratitude in our thanksgiving. We also express our gratitude for God's faithfulness to us in little things as well as in big things. Things like, you know, leeks that grow and rhubarb that can be made into soup. Jam. It'd be very interesting if it was soup. We also express our gratitude to God for his grace and mercy. Despite all our faults and failings, you know, like Miriam, despite all of that, he still loves us and he can still speak through us. And we can express our gratitude that God promises to be our God, whatever the future holds.